and we are going to work aggressively in the area of adding value to the uranium that we have in our province in biblical proportions. The next ounce of yellow cake that we add any value to at all in our province before it leaves will be the first. I think that needs to change. I think we need to be able to look at the opportunities for refinement and for conversion and for upgrading. If we ever could get off the list of bad boys, it includes Iran and Korea, and our federal government's been making progress in that regard. We want to look at the opportunities around the federal government's stated intent to find that next generation of nuclear technology. We want to work with what exists in the country already through AECL and perhaps think a little bit, to use that worn-out phrase, but to think a little bit outside the box about what's possible. We're going to be there as well with an investment from our province to try to carve a niche of strength for our economy with respect to uranium value-added opportunities. So we seek to poise Saskatchewan at the middle of this action around innovation. One of my favorite authors is Thomas Friedman. And probably most people in this room have read his first two books, and maybe you've now also already read Hot, Flat, and Crowded. He was interviewed by Time magazine, I think in advance of the release of his latest book, and asked this question. He was asked, what is your favorite renewable fuel? And here's what he said. Do you know what my favorite renewable fuel is? An ecosystem for innovation. That's really what's missing today. 100,000 people out there trying 100,000 different things in 100,000 different garages. Who knows what would come of that, he asks rhetorically at the end. And I echo that rhetorical question. Who knows what can come of a concerted and continental effort with respect to innovation, especially in the area of environment and energy. The confluence of those two issues presents us a challenge, certainly, in this economy, but a huge, huge opportunity, and I want Saskatchewan to be right in the middle of it. You know, I was at the Western Governors Association meeting in July, and before the meeting we met with the National Laboratory of Idaho, and they had this interesting map of all of the energy sources, renewable and non-renewable, along the west side of our continent, and also of all the jurisdictions, the states and the provinces that are looking at the innovation piece around energy and the environment. And it is amazing what's going on, sometimes too separately and too disparately. But it is amazing what's going on today on the continent, if not in a cooperative way. And I mean, I don't know. I think Friedman's asking those questions. What is possible with respect to renewables, solar and wind and biomass? What is possible with respect to cleaning up fossil fuels? Is there an application for nuclear power to the oil sands? What about fusion? What about cellulosic ethanol? The United States government has signaled that they'd like to see, or at least Secretary Bodman has signaled that he'd like to see a cellulosic ethanol competitive with gasoline in 5 years. What is possible? To some of these things seem eye-rollingly crazy, I'm sure. Probably that is exactly how the Man to the Moon mission speech sounded to the joint session of Congress in, was it 1961? It might have sounded like someone was trying to change the channel after the Bay of Pigs, I don't know. But we understood the import and the impact of that speech with a timeline and an objective and how it marshaled the forces of that country to achieve an objective. That is the kind of vision that we need in North America today. That's the kind of vision that we need here in Canada. There is this huge opportunity around environment and energy, but what we're going to need to succeed is a dynamic partnership of industry, of unit governments, provinces of states, and our national government, and academia, and you. And you. That will be our focus in Saskatchewan. We are going to move aggressively to find those technological answers. And by the way, that's why we're not as interested as some in talking about a carbon tax or even cap-and-trade systems that do not have stringent and fulsome requirements that levies raised from cap-and-trade go to technology to find the answer. We're not objecting to any of these fiscal tools in the province. We're saying the measure of efficacy of any of these fiscal measures has got to be, do they create Friedman's ecosystem of innovation? Do they get us to the answer? Because some of the cap-and-trade schemes that I've heard don't have that goal. They don't have the objective of the technology. And to me, that's sort of like fat guys paying skinny guys to eat their dessert when we got to be putting away the dessert. We've got to find the answers. That's the point that we make in Saskatchewan. as for Saskatchewan, that's where we're going to go. And if there ever is a continental cap and trade system, and you know, increasingly Americans, and all of us, but Americans principally, are worried about their home and their job and their pension, and maybe their carbon footprint, but I don't know where it is on the list. But if the cap and trade continental system is inevitable, and we can agree in these relatively decentralized federations on caps and prices and all of that stuff, we are going to be ready, because we'll have made the investment in Saskatchewan in the technology that actually gets us to the answer, that gets us less dependent on coal, for example, in our province. In Saskatchewan, we seek that ecosystem of innovation through the right tax policies. That's the moonshot, folks. I believe it with all of my heart today. That's the moonshot, and we want to be a force for good for the country in this effort. Part of that's part of the story we came to Toronto with, Madam President. Part of it is also to share the prosperity and the opportunity that we have in Saskatchewan with those who may be currently unemployed, who maybe have lost their job in Ontario. That is also a strength of this country that we love, that the regions can be strong when perhaps another is not as strong as it has been, and provide opportunity for others. That is also a part of our message. My Canada, ladies and gentlemen, is a place where an ecosystem of innovation is a positive descriptor, one of the positive descriptors of national identity. We live in a country whose nationality and patriotism, to the extent it exists, is too often defined insecurely by the things that we are not. And all my friends love that I Am Canadian rant commercial, and it was pretty clever. But if you listen to it long enough, it was kind of frustrating, wasn't it? It drew identity for the country and pride in the country from a long list of negatives, things that we're not. Well, we don't do that, at least we're not like this. That was that list. I am not being critical here. That's really part of our historical DNA. For those of you who had a chance to read Richard Gwynn's recent biography on John A. Macdonald, the man who made us, you will know that his is just the latest reminder that the country was founded, the country was bound together in a union with as many negative and preventative incentives as there were positive and enabling ones. But today, notwithstanding our history, today, think of what binds us together in a positive way. Consider the huge resource potential of our country when the world is still looking for those resources. Consider the geographic diversity and the natural beauty. Consider the relative strength of our economy. Who would think that 2 weeks ago here we'd be in Toronto and all over Canada toasting oligopolies and high service fees? It's put it here. Yeah. It's put us in a significantly stronger position than others who lack that. That's a positive attribute. That is a strength today of our country. Consider the Federation itself, which is stronger than ever. The Federation, which has now more have capacity than have not capacity. A Federation that can offer opportunity to those other regions when there's a disposition, an economic disposition in those places. In 2008, there is simply too much grandeur. There is too much opportunity for us as Canadians to lead, too much strength in our federation to not tempt and tease that next great moment or phase in our country's history. I believe that one of those moments, at least, can be founded in our desire and in the world's desire for cleaner energy, and how our place on the planet can offer that energy, that cleaner energy. For what it's worth, that's our vision in Saskatchewan. That is the golden moment of opportunity that we're working hard to seize. Because, you know, when I get home on Wednesday night and walk through the door, Megan's right. I am not going to be the Premier. I'm going to be her dad and Coulter's dad and Faith's dad and someone's grandpa someday. And really that's what's at stake. That's what's at stake. It's not cliche. It's not rhetoric. That's what I think motivates all of us in what we do. It motivates our new government in Saskatchewan to leave a place that is debt-free, cleaner, and stronger than it ever has been economically. And that's good for Saskatchewan, but it's great for Canada. Thank you, and God bless our country.